meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Well, good morning again, friends.
Good morning.
I was here in June. I was happy to be coming back in September. I had no idea what I was going to be coming back in the midst of. No idea. This was a difficult week to be an Episcopalian in Western Michigan. When we alluded to it in the announcements, but on Thursday, our bishop provisional was restricted from ministry by the presiding bishop's office, which means he cannot function as a bishop in the Episcopal Church. And on Friday, his resignation was received by our diocese, and he is no longer our bishop provisional. We can talk about the details of that in the coffee hour experience, but it seemed like something that needed to be said out loud in case someone didn't necessarily know what all was going on. That is one of the things that has been going on. Our tradition, Episcopal, is named for this system of polity, where there is a bishop among us. The word Episcopal means oversight. And I am a convert to this tradition because I believe in this system. And so it has been quite a struggle this week for me oh my goodness, what just happened? Sorry about the sound. My issues. The sound system's fine. Sorry about me and the sound. It's been quite a week, in part because I am the vice chair of our diocesan council, and so we have had responsibilities related to this situation. And I have had responsibilities related to our responsibilities. Just kind of like that. There's a moment of silence. In the midst of all of this, after all of my responsibilities were done for the moment, and I was kind of reeling from the events of the Thursday and Friday, I reached out to my friend Molly Bosher, who is the rector at St. Andrew's Grand Rapids, and on the standing committee, a member of the standing committee. We can talk about how that works later too. And I just texted her and I said, "Do you want to have dinner?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And Molly and I went to dinner in Grand Rapids, sat outside, kind of looked at each other, a little stunned, and I happened to mention to Molly that I was going to be with you all on Sunday. And she said, "Oh, I remember them. My family always would go to Crystal Mountain. And there was one Sunday, it was Palm Sunday, when my family went to Crystal Mountain. And we went to that church because it was the closest church to Crystal Mountain. And we walked in, and the next thing I knew, my mother was the head of their Palm Sunday procession." I thought to myself, what is God doing that Molly has this story to tell me here and now? And I pondered that story in our circumstances and me being here with you and the lessons that we have in Scripture for today. Our lessons that we have in Scripture for today are about how hard it is for humans to know how to treat each other well. I mean, we couldn't have anything more appropriate as Episcopalians in Western Michigan this week. And they talk about, what do you do when somebody hurts you? What do you do when someone does wrong against you? How are you to think about it and act when somebody hurts you or does wrong against you, and you go and talk about it, and nothing changes? Jesus tells us that the very first thing to do is not to publicly announce that you have a grievance against someone. It's not even to go and talk to two other people about the fact that you have a grievance against this third person. Jesus tells us the first thing to do when someone has wronged you is go all by yourself and have a direct and honest conversation with that person. I'm going to say, that's a hard thing to do. Sometimes when someone has wronged you or you've been hurt, the easiest thing to do is to say nothing and to let that lodge inside you. And if you do that, sometimes it usually comes out, maybe sometimes with you accidentally hurting somebody else. Jesus says don't do that. Try to directly address the problem that you have with the other person. We could just stop there and that could be a whole homily. But that's not the end of what Jesus has to say. He says maybe that person can't hear you. Well, okay, maybe they need other people to know that you're not making things up. So get a couple other people that know you're not making things up and have another direct conversation. Then if the person still doesn't hear you, it's probably a good idea for the whole church to know what's going on. And then Jesus says, if the person still is not going to respond, even when the whole church knows what's going on, he says, let that person be to you as a tax collector or a Gentile. So, how did Jesus treat tax collectors and Gentiles? With love. With love. Which makes this a very complicated sentence. So you're supposed to love the church, and you're also supposed to love the tax collectors and Gentiles. What are these two different kinds? Are these two different kinds of love? Like, what's going on here? In my experience, those are two different kinds of love. When I think about the people that are closest to me, I love them and I trust them. I love them and I trust them because when I'm honest about them having hurt me, they apologize and they try to do better. When I'm with somebody that I love and I trust, there is a sense of unity, hope, and peace. There's a sense of promise and the capacity to make a difference together for someone else beyond us. I think that's the kind of love we're meant to have in the church. I'm not saying we don't pursue. I mean, even families have a hard time having that kind of love. But the kind of love that includes trust, that's the kind of love that I think Jesus is talking about when he says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there. And then there's another kind of love as well. There's the kind of love where you can't trust. Where maybe you've said something again and again with more and more people and louder, and you have to say, that person, I need to love them at a greater distance. I need to love them as someone that I need to ask God to change. I haven't been able to affect anything about their behavior, but I can trust that God might if I care and love and pray in a way that still somehow keeps me safe because I don't quite trust. It wouldn't make sense to trust given what I've already experienced. In our lesson from our epistle today, we heard that our call is to love. Our call is to love no matter how we've been treated. Our call is to love even our enemies, even those who have hurt us, even those we don't trust. We're still called to love them. And we are called to love not because we're so great, but because God is so great. And somehow God has already loved the people that we don't trust, brought them into being, and offered them a chance of hope and redemption again and again that's beyond our capacity to understand. And if you're hearing these words, which, hopefully all of you are, let us also be mindful that accidentally sometimes we can be, I think I might be somebody that some people might not trust. Not because they've necessarily told me that, but simply because sometimes you get caught in circumstances where people go, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? That's why Jesus tells us to have that direct conversation, so that trust can be rebuilt when it is accidentally broken. We do all of this not only for our own sake, but also for the sake of the people who don't know who Jesus is and don't know what a way of love is, and who have never heard the call to love even your enemies, because Christ loved them first. Because we are the church. That day when Molly Mosher walked in the door here for the first time, and instead of treating her like a stranger, you treated her like one of your own. You treated her mom like one of your own anyway. I mean, one of your own, only one of your own will lead the Palm Sunday procession. Guess what they were? They were disciples, but they were not Episcopalians. And I find myself wondering if there was something about the way that you treated that family of strangers, being ready to love them, being ready to incorporate them into your life together, as if you were ready to follow that call to entertain strangers, welcome a stranger, because you might be entertaining an angel without knowing it. Molly Mosher is a priest in the Episcopal Church now, and a member of our diocesan standing committee, and one of my best friends when we most need her. You never know what your ministry will do to change somebody's life in a way that will end up blessing the world. You only can know day by day to love, to speak truth, to have the hard conversations.